Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before going to the topic of the presentation that I'm going to talk about, it's a really honor for me to come here and talk about my experiences. But before that, I'm really overwhelmed with the inspiring stories of all the other speakers, talking about education, empowerment, creativity, and on a more personal level, the idea of perseverance, willpower, and the ability to change the course of the future. And the topic of my conversation today is going to be dealing with all the same topics, all the same issues that were discussed by all the other speakers. Because as the Karl Popper says that in philosophy there is no true issue, but it's all about the semantics. So it's going to be a different semantic, it's going to be again on a different level, but it's going to be the story of perseverance, the story that we have the ability to change our future and change our life and the communities that we are living in. Before going to the main line of the topic, that is diversity, I would like to share my story. And my story is not going to be something that is entirely different from the stories of the other people. It's at the end of the day a story of facing challenges and trying to overcome those challenges, and in the path of trying to face those challenges, we get on paths, we embark on journeys that we never ever imagined that we are going to do. I was born... It's not working. I was born and raised for 18-19 years of my life in Quetta city. Though I look a bit different from the other Pakistanis because of my features, for sure. Because that's the question I always come across from all the people, from adults to the children, to the men and women in Lahore and Islamabad. They ask me that, are you Pakistani? So that's the question that I always try to answer in very explanation, because I have to explain myself, because there is a very prototype of Pakistan that has been established, that brown people with a specific characteristic and certain facial features that is defined as Pakistani. My forefathers and grandparents, they came from the central Afghanistan. It was 120 years ago, because there was this wave of persecution in Afghanistan. They left that and they settled in Quetta, Balochistan. I think it was 12 years ago, in 2004, it was the 2nd of March, a normal day. I was having my breakfast with my other siblings at home, and my mother told me that if something comes up today, buckle your shoes tightly and run as fast as you can. That was something that I never heard before, and it was something really perplexing for me, because I couldn't understand the meaning of those words, that if something bad happens, run as fast as you can. I knew only one thing about that day, because that was the 10th of the Muharram, the day of Ashura, where I was supposed to go for a religious procession with all the other guys of the community went there for. And around the afternoon there was this, when I reached the main location of the bazaar, there was this huge blast. And in the huge blast there was this ensuing gunfire. All of a sudden people were falling, there were cries, people were taking their final breath. And for 10 seconds I was totally shocked. I couldn't even move my body. I was totally numb. And then the words of my mother came to my mind, and then suddenly I ran towards home. It was 3 kilometers. I ran incessantly, and during the whole, it was, I was crying and I didn't know what was happening. And then when it settled for me, I understood that there was this attack on the community, on my community, the different people. That idea of different being attacked by someone different which I never knew about. And that fear and phobia of the other started creeping in my mind and in my personality. And that was when I understood that there is this idea in the society that sometimes we don't accept the other, who don't believe like us, who don't look like us, and sometimes they practice their life not according to the established norm of the society. So my story, at the end of the day, is linked into the larger story of society where people are treated as the other. And we see that in our society, there are a number of communities who are being treated not as the mainstream, they are called the others. Whenever we see the picture of Lahore, the prosperity of the country, the skyscrapers of Karachi, Lahore, we don't see the pictures of the other. Those are the people when I got the chance to visit in Yunabad. The people of a community of 300,000 people living in a community that is entirely impoverished without sanitation and without proper education. 80% of the youth are working as janitorial worker. And we never hear their story because they are on the other side of the story. Because the front side of the story that we are getting is all about mainstream society. The same, when I moved to Lahore for my undergrad education from the University of Engineering and Technology, I was always confronted with this question that, who are you? Are you Pakistani? You look like a Chinese. But I had to explain myself every time and again. And I came to know that there is this entrenched mindset in our society that we have always tried to portray a certain brand of Pakistani idea of nationhood. Like who is going to be defined as a real Pakistani? But we have stories of other communities who don't fit into that category. In my talk, the most important thing that I will be talking about is that how diversity is something that we have not really cherished in our society so far. The idea of diversity has not been very important for us. Whenever we talk about the suffering of the minorities, whenever we talk about the suffering of the communities in Pakistan, it's always about as if we are doing a charity for the other while talking about them. It's always about this hierarchy has been drawn that whenever it is the story of the persecution, it is not very important for the people to talk about unless and until it's not more than 100 people. This quantification of death, this hierarchy of death, when the people from the peripheral areas are killed, they are not talked about. The mainstream media is not rich with the stories of the other. Recently we had the story of transgender community. For years they have been persecuted, but since they do not fit into the category of the in the mainstream society, since they are the other, they are hardly talked about. We don't see that kind of moral outrage that we feel sometimes for other stories in our society. Because whenever we talk about diversity, it is something that comes more of something as a multicultural society. For example, when we talk about diversity, it's more about the story of the Western civilization, about the America, about the Europe when we have those stories. But Pakistan is as much diverse as any other country in the world. We have religious, we have ethnic, we have cultural diversity in our country. And why we should cherish diversity? It's not on the basis that we should be just saying that it should be there. It is important for each and every person. Consider the example. There was this research conducted in the Silicon Valley, and they were saying that we all talk about in Silicon Valley about innovation, about creativity. And these are the two buzzwords that are always connected with entrepreneurship. But the mother of diversity, the mother of creativity is diversity. Because if you're not coming across new people, if you're not coming across new ideas, how can you be working and developing new solutions to the challenges? Because at the end of the day, we are nothing but the sum of our experiences. Each one of us, whenever we develop something new, it's because we have come across something new. not something that we have always been used to. That is the comfort zone, and comfort zone is not going to be solving our issue. I was recently asking this question from a friend of mine who is a stand-up comedian, that what is the one most fundamental thing that defines a successful comedian? And he was like, meeting new people. It's the traveling and meeting new people that gets you across new kind of people. If, for example, if I talk on a more personal level, I bring something with my personality from a culture that is something entirely new to you. I have my own stories, I have my own folk stories, I have my own culture and type of music that is totally alien to the mainstream society. And when people on a more individual basis go and meet friends, they go and make friends in other communities, other cultures, they enrich their personality. So it's not kind of, when we talk about diversity, it's something just a privilege. It is a fundamental right. Whenever I talk about, when the issue is about dream, I always aspire that I wish I had a class. I wish I had a workplace where I had the opportunity to work and learn from the other communities. I had my classmate, someone with the name of Mukesh, which I never met Mukesh with the Hindu community. I met my Hindu friend Asindi when I went for a fellowship to Sweden. And that was something entirely perplexing for me. It was something extraordinary, because living in a country, when we say that we have 4 different provinces, we are a multicultural society, but we never come across those people. And that has left some void in our society that we have never been able to fill. Another thing that I want to mention here in Quetta. Just raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 people are here out of almost 200 people who have ever visited Quetta. The thing is, when you go to Quetta, my community is not living just like the people live here in Lahore. It's a certain area of 3 kilometers which is entirely barricaded. It is entirely closed from the outside because there is a threat of violence against the community. But the issue is not only about safety. Just consider that for now, just 20 years down the line, these people won't be having friends with the other communities. And this cultural ghetto, this cultural frontier that has been drawn due to the security issue is going to change into a drastic situation where people are not going to trust each other. And that lack of trust is going to again perpetuate more violence between the communities. So these cultural ghettos, for example, we have one ghetto in Yunabad, we have slums in Karachi where they do not have interaction with the mainstream society. And that fear and that xenophobia is at the end of the day going to cause not only the people or the communities, but overall the entire country. And one of the important thing is about, when we talk about education, just recently we have started talking about education, how education should be in the country. We talk about literacy, 56% people go to school. But how the system of education should be run is not a conversation that we have started now. It is, I think, more important conversation to have. It's just not about literacy, that sending children to school is going to solve all the issues of Pakistan. Just consider an education system that I was part of. I went to a government school. We were given a syllabus or curricula that was telling us outrightly falsities and hate. We were told in the 5th class, when I was in the 5th class, the question was, tell us 5 things that distinguishes in a pejorative way between Hindus and Muslims. I was part of that generation when we were learning the Pak studies. We had to demean the other community to learn what the history is. Those hate speech, those falsities that were given to us is not something that we would call education at the end of the day. That is something that we call filling the mind of the people with ignorance. Because hate can never be education. At the end of the day, education is concerned with more the values of compassion, trying to give to the communities and learn from one another. If the fear, xenophobia and hatred of the other people can be called education, then that is failing the entire nation, because that is not education. Rather, on the other level, I would be using the word pedagogy, because the pedagogy is something lacking in our education system. And why pedagogy? Because in our education system, I won't be telling people that there is just we and them. There is going to be no binary. When we create that kind of binary in the education system that we prevalently see in our educational curriculum, we have seen it because we define ourselves in a certain way. Just consider this example. In our curriculum, we are told that 97% population of Pakistan comprises of Muslims. That's for sure, but that does not define the entire people. Each person is different from the other people, not only in terms of culture, but ethnicity. Where do I fit in that 97% when people don't know me and my community, and they ask me again and again whether I am a real Pakistani or not? So you see that the idea that majority is going to define what is right or wrong, that is part of our curricula. One more thing that you have noticed, if you have been keenly observing this, there is this culture in our part of the city also, in our part of the country. When people go for fighting, they say that if we can bring up a lot of friends, if we have more numbers, then we are going to defeat the other side. It happens because if one group can bring 20 or 25 people, that idea that if you can bring more people is going to define your strength, that you are right or wrong, that the number is going to decide, not the quality or the content of your argument. So that is part of our culture, and that should change. And in our education system, that one thing is more we very much stress about and we focus on is more about giving skills. When I talked about that innovation and creativity is closely intertwined, is closely related to diversity, I'm not getting that in my education system. In my education system, I was given an environment where all the people were just like me. No new idea was coming. And lastly, but most important thing is that my education system is not giving me that real life experience. That comedian always comes to my mind that says that I am meeting new people, that's why I am diversifying myself. That's why I am learning new things in my life. And whenever I see on the other side, in our literature, we hardly talk about the other side of the story, the wretched of the earth, the people who are hardly considered to be the mainstream, the minorities of Pakistan, the transgender community. Even sometimes we see that even being 50% of the population, women are not represented the way they deserve to be represented in literature, in the history, and in every aspect of life. And when I'm finishing this entire talk with one fascinating tale that I came through a book I was reading. The story sums up like this way. The person says that I'm going to raise my children. If I get the opportunity again to teach my children one basic thing, I will be telling them that there is no single truth in the world that you should aspire for, but rather there is a multiplicity or a layer of truth that you should go for. Because when you go with one idea that there is only one truth, that you see that you say that you hold it, then there is going to be arrogance, there is not going to be humility to learn new things. So that idea, when we say that why extremists behave this way, because they have been told that there is just only one truth. So diversity will bring you new perspective, not only in terms of culture, but in terms of ideology, in terms of new perspective. And the new perspective will at the end of the day may bring that humility to accept and not judge the other people. And the dream, there is a very famous quote from Dr. King, Martin Luther King, who said that I want to raise my 2 children in a society where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So that is how societies have developed their country, because it is at the end of the day not the color of our skin that should define us as a person. I am well beyond all those things that is defining me on the outside. So that what should define us as a person and what we should define other people should be more on the content of their character, what they hold inside rather than their skin or religion or ethnicity. Thank you very much.